designed our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
Fuck the prime time, bitch!
Monmouth the new Fletch.
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
Gotta return some videotapes.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to the It Slays podcast. I'm your humble host, Rowan.
And I'm Betty Davis's glamour shot, Mike.
And I'm Colton.
And it's Jill.
And we are back. We are done with fan pick, or what was it called? Fan poll, fan pick. I kept screwing it up. Fan favorite February.
The alliteration, Rowan. We've been over this.
Jesus, I'm terrible. And we're into March, where we just said fuck it, free for all, because we're heathens like that. So hopefully everyone's March is starting well. But let's kick right into it. What have we been consuming? What have we been watching? What have we been listening to? What have we been reading? All that good stuff. And Jill, we'll start with you.
All right, I'm going to start with books. So we all know I was like going through the Sarah J. Maas Crescent City series. I read the whole fucking series. Shut up, in a month. So I just recently read House of Flame and Shadow, which is the third Crescent City book that just came out at the end of January. It was so good. I had such a good time reading it and just like picking up on all the overlaps and like Easter eggs from her other series. They kind of like overlapped. And I always read her books with like a hefty stack of reading post-its to like underline things I find to be, you know, pretty or sentimental or important.
Okay, I was gonna say the books aren't that complex, right? It's not like
they are. They actually are.
Come on, it's like a YA series or something, isn't it?
There's like a lot of world building and like
it used to be
theories.
YA, now it's adult.
Yeah, it's adult. It's hella adult. This one especially. But yeah, I have like a bunch of theories and stuff, so I'll like highlight that if I think it's gonna be a part of it. It's a whole rabbit hole. It's not that shallow, Colton, so whatever.
I'm judging, but I'm just trying to keep quiet,
It was really good. I had such a good time reading it, and now I'm gonna be super depressed. I finished The Hate U Give, which I was talking about last time. It was excellent. Highly recommend that. I'm currently reading Bride by Ali Hazelwood. It's a new one that a lot of people are reading, and it has high praise. It's like a vampire werewolf type of marriage deal.
Girl,
so I'm enjoying
the main
that.
character's name in that is ridiculous.
Yeah, Misery.
I'm like, please, is this a joke?
We'll see how it goes. I haven't read any of her other books, but this one, it's a little paranormal. I love paranormal romance, so I'll report back on that one later. This is going to set Colton off. I'm going to move over to movies. We all know that I was
going to say you should have did the transition of speaking of paranormal romances. I saw Lisa Frankenstein,
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I went to see Lisa Frankenstein. I really loved it. The soundtrack was fire. I love the outfits and the looks, like the hair and the makeup. It was gorgeous to look at, and it was just fun and romantic. And I think it'll get more attention in a couple of years, kind of like when Jennifer's Body came out and it became a cult classic eventually. I think that's going to happen with this one as well. So we'll see, but I loved it. I'm going to buy a physical copy when it comes out. And I know Colton hated it.
Yeah, no, I really didn't enjoy it. If anybody listened to our now slaying about it, you can hear my thoughts there. I'm not going to reiterate them here just to detract from Jill. But yeah, it was very much not my thing.
Yeah, which is a shame because I really liked it. But, it's definitely, it's definitely my cup of tea. But anyways, I finally watched Priscilla since it's now streaming on Max and Prime, but I watched it on Max.
Nice. I need to hear your thoughts.
I liked it. It was beautiful. Love the soundtrack also. I just wanted more. When it ended, I was like, that's it? I want more. So that's my only complaint, is that I would have loved to see more of like independence from her at the end instead of her just like driving at the gate. I love Jacob Elordi too, and he did a great job playing a dickhead, so I love it. And also I rewatched The Bling Ring and I, Tonya. Both are really just fun.
That's random.
It is random, but you know, it's Emma Watson doing like a terrible American accent. I'm fucking here for all like the Y2K like cunty shit. Bling Ring is such a cunty movie, and I love it.
I haven't seen that since it came out. I remember it was alright.
Same. Yeah, I liked it. And yeah, I, Tonya. I also really love that movie. So yeah, just some fun times. But yeah, what about you, Colton?
Yeah, I've just been watching great stuff as well, you know, the past couple of weeks. Like, you know, I went to the theater to see, you know, everyone's favorite new movie, Madam Web, which by the time people are listening to this, it'll be like really old hat, because I feel like already the discourse is like peaked around it. Like, we've moved on from making fun of it on Twitter and whatever else by now. But I got nothing new to say about it. I thought it was absolutely horrendous. My friend and I, we were like those obnoxious people at the movie theater, just essentially cackling at every single scene. Like, there was stuff to laugh at, whether it was like the actors clearly just basically being like, I'm going to do this line once because it's awful, and one take, that's it. And it's like half slurred, half delivered, like they do not care. Or like how the villain, 90% of his dialogue, and I'm not even joking, is ADR'd, and it's completely different than like the beginning of the movie where he has an accent and the end of the movie has an accent. The rest of it is all just ADR dialogue that doesn't match his mouth at all. And it's very much like, it's not this line, but it's like, we have to kill the Spider-Man or something like that, you know, like just very like weird mustache twirling, like the most boring villain shit ever. I thought it was a really interesting detail to basically say that Spider-Man culturally appropriated his suit from like Peruvian Spider-Man. Like, I don't know if you thought that, Rowan, when you were watching it, but it was really funny how all this like Peruvian native tribe had like roots kind of like laid on them in like the web, like, you know, sequence of if it was a Spider-Man suit. That was really funny. I enjoyed the movie with a nice Diet Pepsi, which I'm happy that it like really worked well with the movie, because every single scene of the movie, there's like Pepsi placement in there. So much so that the climax of the movie takes place at a fireworks factory. But for some reason, there's a huge Pepsi Cola neon sign on the front of it, and it factors into the final fight. I won't spoil how, but it's like blatant shit. They literally give Cassie, Madam Web, Pepsi to hold in her hand. That one of her character traits is she like messes around with the tab on the top. She never cracks it open to drink it, but she just like fiddles with it. It's like, it's crazy that like how blatant the product placement in it is, but it's just literally like it all comes together to basically be like one of the worst movies I've seen in a long time, but I've really enjoyed it because it was just so bad the entire time. Like it was literally like I've only contemplated giving like a half star to like a few movies, and when there's like, it's basically when there's things that are fundamentally broken with them. And this one, like, once again, because 90% of the dialogue is ADR'd with the villain, doesn't line up, the editing's horrendous, there's a bunch of different things, visual effects are terrible. It was just like, I think I might give this movie a half star, but then I was like, I laughed so much throughout the entire thing. I wasn't remotely bored, that I was like, I can't just give it a half star, so I gave it a 1 star. It's still a really bad movie, but it was almost like so bad that it's actually really good. And also like Madam Web's superpower of sometimes seeing the future, but not having any superpowers to do anything about it. So she just constantly crashes cars into things to fix it. Like, oh my God, I was dying. I was like living for it. It was just friggin' hilarious. Rowan, you also saw Madam Web, and I kind of took shots at you on Letterboxd.
Yeah,
about
did.
Your
just
rating
a little
of
bit.
it.
That's all right.
So yeah, what do you think of Madam Web?
Yeah, I mean, it's not good. I think it's like, I think it's definitely pretty campy. And, like, not purposefully. It's definitely just, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It's just, like, they got a bunch of people in a room together that don't know how to make a movie. And then they made a giant budget movie. Like Colton said, the ADR is just wild. Within the first 5 minutes, there's a scene where the bad guy is talking and the camera is on him and his mouth isn't moving, but we're looking right at his mouth. It's just not moving and he's saying things.
It reminded me of like the old spaghetti westerns, but obviously with no artistry to it. Like obviously, the old ones, the Fistful of Dollars trilogy, like that's something where everyone's supposed spoke in their native languages, and like basically none of the mouths line up, and it drives me crazy. But like this was just like I couldn't find any reasoning for it online. Nobody was talking about like the actual production behind this. So I don't know if they're like all NDA'd or what, but I was like, I hope there's an explanation for this, and there wasn't.
Yeah, no, and I mean, like, you know, obviously Dakota Johnson is like now, you know, yet again an internet meme for this, and I don't even know if I can blame her now. I mean, we know that she just doesn't care about this movie or anything to do with it.
Yeah, the narrative is essentially that she fired her agents after seeing the trailer for this movie because she thought it was an MCU movie. Like they kept pitching it to her as like, oh, it's a Marvel movie, like you have to be part of this. And apparently Sydney Sweeney's agents did the same thing.
Yeah.
And like they're just not nerds. They're not into the MCU at all, that they didn't know like Sony universe, Disney universe type shit.
To be fair though, Dakota Johnson doesn't like anything she's in. So like 50 Shades of Grey.
Well,
yeah.
50 Shades of Grey is bad, Jill. You can't name Madam Web in 50 Shades of Grey and be like, she doesn't like anything she's in, you know?
Well,
it's like the two worst things.
I'm just saying.
But yeah, no, like I just thought everyone was like just kind of, I don't even want to say miscast, because I think about like Sydney Sweeney, like she actually does look like, you know, Spider-Girl, like in the comics.
I could tell that that's who it was supposed to be, knowing nothing about the movie. Like I looked at her and I said, she has to be Spider-Girl. Like there's no way she isn't.
But it does like weird things. And maybe I don't know, but like I thought Spider-Girl was not named Julia. Like I thought she had a different name. Is it? I don't know.
The fact that you're getting hung up on this,
you
where
know,
it's
I
like,
get hung up on
those characters are in the movie for 10 seconds. It's literally like she has a premonition of like what they can wind up being in the future. They're not Spider-Girl in the movie.
Yeah.
She's literally a super attractive girl with glasses on to make her a nerd. It's like literally like a 2000s thing. You know, it's like, it's just crazy. They put her in oversized shirt just to basically like, oh, this girl doesn't have a, you know, a nice body. You know, let's put her in an oversized dress shirt the entire movie, you know?
And that's just what's weird. Just, I don't know what the conception of this movie was. Like, let's make a prequel movie about superheroes that don't have a movie. So, it doesn't make any sense. Like, there's no real, like, other than maybe, like 5 minutes, there's no real, like, superhero action going on. It's just like a slog.
Dude, 5 minutes is still like once again, Cassie has no superpowers. Any of her powers is just like, oh my god, something's gonna fall near me, so I'm gonna take one step to the left so it misses me. Like, it's not like action packed, like fun to watch. It's just literally you're watching like That's So Raven. Which, once again, That's So Raven was good for a 20-minute Family Channel show, but like not for 2 hours with a $90 million budget.
And I'm gonna wait for Immaculate, but I think this year I might be ready to have the conversation of, is Sydney Sweeney a good actor or not? Which,
well, we gotta watch the rom-com. I haven't seen that. What is it?
Yeah, that looks terrible.
Anyone but you. Yeah, I haven't seen that yet. I gotta watch that. You know,
it can't be good. The trailer is so cringe. Every time I see it, I'm like, ugh.
I feel like we're in for another, just like, she's got this like one note performance in everything she does, which like obviously worked in Euphoria because of the character. But it's just like, you can't just keep doing that. I mean, maybe
White Lotus, she was really good also.
But that was another slap glasses on her role, though.
Yeah, like, she doesn't really have to do anything. It's just kind of like...
I think she's good, but I think she's just, like, picking up flop projects.
Like, Sydney Sweeney is the hottest girl in anyone's high school, even with the glasses on. I can't buy her as, like, literally, like, oh, she's this ugly, nerdy chick. Like, you guys are crazy. Like, anyone casting her in those roles.
Yeah.
What do you think of the villain having kind of, like, this action set piece to Britney Spears' Toxic when he has toxic powers?
Yeah, but I believe I complained the cold one to this the minute I came out. Because as we always talk about, what do I hate? When movies can't chronologically get their music correct in their movie. So this movie is set in 2003, in the summer of 2003. Toxic didn't come out.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which is a whole other issue because...
So apparently it was originally set in the early 90s, and then after the movie was filmed, they added a bunch of stuff and a bunch of ADR to make it set in 2003, by the way. But
oh my god, they just butchered this thing.
It's completely butchered, yes.
Like,
it's
this
crazy.
is wild.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's literally like CGI Beyonce album covers in the background to like make it fit 2003.
Yeah, and so let me get my Britney Spears factoids out here.
All right, come on, spit them out.
The summer of 2003, Toxic was not out. Toxic was released as a single in January 2004. The album it's on didn't come out till like November 2003. There was a whole nother single out in the summer. So, what I'm saying is it actually is impossible for the radio to be playing Toxic as a new single. It drove me nuts.
No, I mean, that album came out in 2003.
Yeah, I already looked it up. The album came out in November, and the first single from the album was not Toxic. It was like some other song I've never heard
what was
of.
It?
Wasn't it Me Against the Music? I think,
that's
maybe?
it. That's it.
Yeah.
And Toxic was released during Super Bowl in 2004.
Yeah, thankfully that's the only thing wrong with the movie, because we could all
other
overlook
than that,
of course, you know.
Also, my only other complaint is like I enjoy Adam Scott. I enjoy Mike Epps. I just don't know how you waste like two guys that really just have to come in and kind of like heat check their performance and be funny. And like even those guys, you could tell were like, I really don't want to be here.
Oh yeah, it was insane. And then they're also like, "Hello, Adam Scott, Benjamin Parker." You know, just like,
well,
oh okay, it's Ben Parker.
We could be here all day discussing the fact that they just brutalize any Spider-Man lore, because I didn't know that Ben Parker knew of spider people like ever, and apparently he already knows all about superheroes and all this stuff. It just doesn't make any sense because you have all these other movies beforehand, and it's just like none of it goes together.
No, it's trash.
Enough of Madame Web.
Yeah, we've talked about Madame Web for like 15 minutes now. It's the first thing I saw. I also saw
like goddamn Web.
Yeah, right? Exactly, right? I also saw Drive Away Dolls, which I'm a big Coen Brothers fan. This is only half of the Coen Brothers. They had like this breakup, and they're each directing their own movie, and then I think they're getting back together for a horror movie actually later this year. But this one's directed by Ethan Coen, and essentially it's just about two women that do a drive-away, which I never knew was a thing, but essentially back in the day, when people needed a car to get from one side of the country to the other, they can employ a drive-away service, and then like people could just drive it. If someone needed to go to Tallahassee, like in this movie, they could just say like, "Hey, is there any driveways heading in that direction so we can take it?" So these two girls, they take it, and essentially, unbeknownst to them, there's a package in their trunk that criminals want. So, of course, like, that's a good, like, Coen Brothers setup, these, criminals that aren't criminals and kind of, like, turning to that life of crime, like, kind of making a decision once they figure out what's in their trunk. But for me, it's just literally, like, this movie's 84 minutes long. They don't even discover that there's anything in their trunk that people want until, like, 50 minutes into the movie. And by that point, there's, like, nothing really fun to do with it. Like, let's say if what was in their trunk was a big, briefcase full of money, it's like you would want them to discover that 15 minutes into the movie. So this road trip across the country, they're just blowing money and like having like the best times of their lives. Yeah. But instead, it's just literally like you're kind of watching these characters go from like dive bar to dive bar, just like picking up women along the way. Like I was gonna say Sydney Sweeney, but Margaret Qualley's character in the movie specifically, she's like a Texas lesbian character that she's like very much like constantly like hitting on everyone and constantly saying, like, "Oh, I can't wait to finger blast that girl, sugar baby," or whatever, like once again, Texas accent. Yeah, like that's the way she speaks the entire movie, and it's just incredibly exhausting after like 5 minutes. And you're obviously with this character for 84 minutes. So it's just like everything about it to me was just very like tiresome. They even do things like all the editing is it's almost like Windows Movie Maker editing. Like, like let's say like a street sign spinning around as a car drives by really fast. They do editing in the movie where it's like you're watching the scene and the scene will like spin around like this and then cut to another scene and it'll kind of like start to accelerate out of the frame and like drive off quickly. Like really obnoxious editing, which once again, obviously, I mean, this is one of the Coen brothers. They know what they're doing. this is obviously a choice. It's just, to me, it was like incredibly irritating, the entire movie. So like, I just found like the central cast irritating to watch. I didn't like kind of like the bumbling idiot criminals that were after them. And for me, it was just like, overall, I was like, this movie would work if you shifted basically the whole movie by like 30 minutes, essentially, where it's like, they're criminals 20 minutes into the movie, right? Rather than like 50 minutes in, and then it's just, it just doesn't have any runway to keep it going and make it fun. So I was very let down by it. And also, maybe this is like sacrilegious to say, but it's like Ethan Coen writing two young lesbian characters. A lot of it felt like old man writing like women, and it was just kind of like, to me, it just didn't hit. So I don't know, maybe it's a hot take. It wasn't really for me. I didn't think it was terrible, but I didn't really enjoy it all that much.
I'm not gonna lie, as soon as you said that, it was lesbians, I was just like, I can't see this being good.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like,
I don't know. I love the Coens, but like that just does not. Yeah, it doesn't compute.
Yeah, like to me, I definitely think they needed like maybe like a co-writer or like a little bit more input on this one. Once again, it's just one of the Coen brothers doing it, but to me, it's just like I got like that old man writing stuff that he doesn't know what he's talking about vibe for it, and also just. Once again, the characters just very much didn't work for me. So yeah, it was a miss. I also finished up True Detective Night Country, which I've mentioned a couple times on the show. Has anyone here watched True Detective, or you got any True Detective fans?
I like True Detective, but
I've had it on my list, but
seen season 1. So.
You say you haven't seen season 1?
No, I've only seen season 1.
Well, in my opinion, season 1's like literally like masterpiece television, but like season 2, it's like, it's not the best, it has some good parts to it, and season 3 was like 10 years later basically, and it was all right. Mahershala Ali's great. This one for me, it's like it should have been great, and it's definitely should have been for me because it's more slanted towards horror. It's set in like Alaska, like right on like the longest day of night, and then basically the whole series is just in the dark from then on out. It has a lot of like kind of like little story beats that I've used in like my own like horror writing and whatnot. So I was just like, this is like literally targeted at me. Like, I'm going to love this. I love True Detective as well. It's just for me, I think it completely misses the mark on like what I want from True Detective. I essentially want, at the center, you need like 2 or more complicated detectives that like begrudgingly have to work with one another. You need a case that kind of spans a long length of time and kind of haunts them about like if they got it right, or like, oh, was it all a setup? It needs to basically be something that they're constantly visiting at moments throughout their life so they can grow and mature, and you can see how this really messed them up. And then you need this sort of writing that's kind of like poetic and larger than life and like philosophical. And I understand like that sort of writing isn't how people speak, but True Detective has always kind of spoke in those ways where they're talking about like karmic debt and faith and like, oh, can good and evil truly exist, or is it just like men that do this? And it's just like, for me, the only thing this movie or this show had at all was just 2 complicated detectives at the center. Everything about it was like very much on the nose. They were just talking constantly about the case or like what one another were doing the night before. Like there was nothing really to kind of like latch onto it and have like this greater discussion about. And also I just think fundamentally, like as a detective show, you need to develop a case. We all need to know after like episode 1, like what we're gunning for, what we're trying to solve. And you should basically be able to kind of like piece the breadcrumbs together, like as you watch it, and have like, all these little like kind of like twist endings or like cliffhangers to kind of like bring us along. But basically everything in this show happens off screen. Like if someone has a big revelation, it's literally like so-and-so will walk in from off screen and be like, yeah, I ran those files that you mentioned once again off screen, and it's pointing us towards this. And then like they'll be like, oh, great, that's like the break we needed. And it's like, okay, well, I would have preferred to see that person doing the actual detective work, because that's what it was in all the other seasons. So it was very strange to me. They spent way more time on horror elements that, once again, were kind of like in the background of the previous seasons, but this one was just way more at the forefront, so much so that I thought the revelation and like who the culprit was going to be was like a supernatural entity, or like, it was, I thought the solution was going to be like, oh, it's Cthulhu or something. Like that's how like far off the rails this went, where I was like, I don't even know if we're going to get like any sort of explanation. We do get one. I thought it was still very disappointing. And yeah, it was just, to me, it was just very much completely missed the mark. What I will say is that I'm in the minority. I think it's by far the most popular season of True Detective. They instantly renewed it for season 5. It's, the whole creative team, everyone's coming back. So maybe the next one will like land a little bit better for me. But like when you have a True Detective show and your theme song is Billie Eilish and you're dropping 4 to 5 modern like needle drops an episode to establish a tone, I'm just like, you guys completely missed the mark with True Detective. It's just literally like, I don't mind all this licensed music, but like that should all be additive. This core show should be good enough and stand on its own without having like Post Malone songs to kind of like hold it up or something, right? It was very strange. It was just not my thing at all by the end of it. I gave it a few episodes, but literally by like episode 3 or 4, I was like starting to get pretty out on this. And yeah, I just didn't nail it in the end either. I very much didn't like it. So I don't know. Maybe you'll like it if you watched it, but it's not for me. Outside of that, did some gaming. Marvel Spider-Man 2, 100% of that. It was fun. It was good. 100% did the Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, which is by the same studio. They're both Insomniac games. But the big thing that I've been spending a lot of time playing is Helldivers 2, which, Mike, you're a bit of a gamer. I feel like you might have saw some of this. You know,
I am desperately in need of Helldivers 2 because I used to love nobody. When I tell you nobody played Helldivers 1, I thought when Helldivers 2 came out, like it was just gonna come and go, and like everybody's fucking playing it, and I was like, what the fuck happened? Like literally, my friend and I, like, I bought it as a couch co-op game for when we were like drinking and stuff, so we could just like sit in front of the TV and game for a few hours. And we used to fucking love it. And I was like, oh my god, Helldivers 2 is coming out. That's so random. And then, like, literally everybody's playing it. And I'm like, this looks amazing. I need it. I don't have, like, $70.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like, ugh.
I didn't play the original Helldivers. I knew of it. I'm a huge, like, PlayStation fanboy. I've owned everything going back to, like, basically the PS3 era. But basically, I thought, same as you, I was like, this is going to come out and, like, you're going to have a few 20,000 people playing this game or something.
Yeah.
Anyways, this game blew up completely, like, overnight, and it's basically been, like, in the rotation with, like, 3 or 4 of my friends each night that will, like, put a couple hours into it if we can get past, you know, the server issues and all that. But yeah, the game's excellent. It's basically just, like, Starship Troopers, essentially, where like on one front you're fighting against the bugs, and it's very like nationalistic, very like satirical, like, you know, fight for fascism type of shit, you know, like very like jingoistic and silly that I really like. And then on the other front you're essentially fighting Terminators. So it's literally like, you know, you're either dropping in to fight Terminators or you're fighting bugs. So it's literally like, yeah, which sci-fi, you know, franchise are you gonna be combating? And it's just a lot of fun, really silly, lots of friendly fire of accidentally blowing people up and getting, you know, mauled by bugs and stuff. So yeah, it's just been fun. That. Yeah, it's been a good time. Basically everyone's been playing it that I know, and that's basically been what's eating up a lot of my evenings. So outside of these couple of things I watched, I really didn't watch anything else. But anyways, Mike, have you been gaming? Like you were doing Elden Ring last time, I think, weren't you?
Oh my god, yeah.
What have you been
still
consuming?
Am.
Yeah.
I might have even been frustrated the last time we recorded an episode because I was like
You're stuck on Rykard, the Volcano Manor boss.
Yeah. But it was Rykard and like 2 other bosses that were like really like giving me a lot of trouble, and I have not gotten past Rykard, but I did beat one of the other big bosses. So there was one storyline in that game that I was like really into, and I was like, I really want to finish this storyline, and the last thing you have to do essentially before tying it up is like beat this boss, and I finally bet the boss. So now I'm like kind of back on track to like, okay, I can avoid that one boss but still play the game. So I'm really enjoying. I'm back into like enjoying Elden Ring again instead of like grinding it, because that's what I was doing for a couple weeks, and it was starting to get a little bit like you know. But so I've been doing that. Drag Race UK versus the World just came out, so I've been watching the new episodes of that and loving it because like some of my faves are back. Finished a few books that I had been putting off finishing because they were really good, including Dayspring and that Kathy Acker biography I was reading. And now I'm actually reading. I realized that there was a couple Kathy Acker books that I had never read before that I didn't own, so I ordered them and I'm reading those now. So I'm reading Great Expectations by Kathy Acker. I'm not going to say I recommend it because her work is very weird, and most people is not their cup of tea, but that's fine. And I rewatched one of my favorite movies of all time last night, Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Nice.
You know, a classic fave. You know, you get drunk and watch Nightmare on Elm Street, like, can't think of anything better. So it's always fun to like watch that movie with other people too, especially when they're like very into like digging into the like gayness of it all.
Hell yeah.
And finally, I watched a movie that I've had on my list for eons and just not gotten around to because I kept like kind of saving it. I'm going to save it for a special occasion. Like I don't know why I do this because my brain is broken. But I watched Messiah of Evil, which is...
I just got a copy of that on Blu-ray.
Yeah, and I really want to get the limited edition is out, and I was like, you know what? I need to get this. So I finally watched it on Shudder, I think it was, the other day, and like absolutely just... It was everything I wanted it to be. It was to me, it's like the sister movie to one of my other faves, Let's Scare Jessica to Death. It's like got that 70s, like lackadaisical walking through a field, but horrific vampiric shit is happening. And, you know, the 70s score and everything. And it's just, I love that. It's such a fucking vibe. Like, it's so 70s. And yeah, it's just a wonderful movie. Did you say you ordered the Blu-ray or you?
So I actually have it. I got it for nothing.
What? Oh my god.
The Code Red like edition that came out. There's a girl at my work that may have like double the physical media collection that I do. That is also like a huge.
Holy shit.
Nobody can. This is impossible.
Right?
I do not believe it.
And pretty much unlike me, where I kind of have everything, she only has horror. And so we kind of do a thing where, you know, like if I upgrade the 4K, like she does Blu-ray, she doesn't do 4K overly. So if I upgrade, like rather than just, you know, go in the marketplace and trying to deal with shitty people selling some Blu-ray, I'm like only selling for like $10 or something. Mm-hmm. I'll basically just hit her up and be like, hey, like, do you have this? And she's into a lot of like kind of like erotic horror stuff, like underground Italian. So a lot of like big titles that I normally
sounds like a queen, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and basically
invite her on.
And basically, like, you know, I'm more of a, you know, like top
shit garbage.
Yeah, big blockbuster horror guy. So we'll just basically like I'll be like, hey, I got a pile of Blu-rays here for you, and she'll be like, hey, do you have this? So yeah, she just recently gave me Messiah Evil, and I got to pick up. She's got The Psychic for me also that I got to pick up.
Oh, the Fulci movie?
Yeah,
nice.
So
I need to get that 4K.
Shout out Melissa for hooking me up. Yeah, I actually don't really have a lot, so I'm not going to be too long. Basically, so I watched some trash television. You know, me and X are currently watching Love is Blind, the new season right now. And, you know, it's Love is Blind. It's only as good as it always is. I'm still watching the new Curb Your Enthusiasm. That's coming out like weekly. I think a new episode comes out tonight. And I also got another episode in. I finally went back, watched some X-Files. So I got another episode in the books. So that was fantastic. I really got to get moving on that because so I can give my review of season 3. For movies, I went back and I did a rewatch of Locke with Tom Hardy, which I thought was a little more loved than when I started reading reviews on it. I feel like it was just kind of in the middle.
Oh, that's interesting. I think a lot of people like that movie. That's
I guess now that I look, it's
like
it's got like a 3.6 on Letterboxd.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like that's one that like came out and nobody really knew anything about it. I think it's also like maybe one of James Gandolfini's last performances, possibly, if I'm thinking of the right movie.
No, you're not.
Great.
That's the one that's.
I know it's the Tom Hardy driving around movie, right?
Yeah, and he's like the only one in it. The
Yeah.
only
notable
person in it are two different people that do voices on the phone. One is Tom Holland and one is Andrew Scott. And those are pretty
sausage
much
fest,
like the big names. But like I said, they're just voices on the phone. But yeah, I really like this one. It's like a single location. Like Colton said, it's just Tom Hardy driving in a car, and it's just kind of like, you know, his life like falling apart and through phone calls. And I always like weird movies like this that are like a weird premise. I love kind of single location done well, and this one is actually done really well. And, you know, I feel like I'm a pretty big Tom Hardy fan, so...
Yeah, the movie I was thinking of, by the way, is 1 year later in 2014 called The Drop. So, my bad. I mean, I knew the one you were talking about.
Yeah.
But I thought,
is that one of the full frontal Tom Hardy movies, or a different one?
I don't know about that.
I will say he doesn't get naked in his car or anything. So in this one, there is no...
Why not?
He's not like, oh, my life's falling apart, let me just jerk off while I drive or something. But,
yeah, I don't know. Maybe he has an OnlyFans or something. I don't know.
Other than that, and, you know, obviously Cole mentioned Madame Web, I've really only been watching stuff for my Oscar watch still. So I did get a chance to see American Fiction, and I really like... That's probably my favorite one I've watched for the Oscar race so far.
Did you give that 5 stars after?
I did give it 5 stars.
You did? Okay.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Is it a 6-star movie, like Killers of the Flower Moon, or...
I don't know if it's a 6-star movie like that, but it's definitely, I thought it deserved the 5 stars. And, you know, I wrote my Letterboxd review. Like, I thought it was interesting because I thought all the racial politics stuff in it was, like, actually pretty secondary to me. I enjoyed, like, a lot of the family drama and this, you know, the stuff about this guy dealing with, like, in this case, his mother with, like, dementia, Alzheimer's, and, like, how that affects a family. And I just thought it was really good. Sterling K. Brown is, like, amazing in it.
Oh, he's great in it. Yeah, I haven't really seen him in a whole lot. I know, obviously.
I remember, like, his...
Us, but,
I've seen a couple episodes of This Is Us. I remember he was, like, you know, the eye candy of brown sugar when it came out, which I think was, like, one of his first roles. But, yeah, like, he's fantastic. We need to get that guy in more movies. I also watched Bobby Wine, The People's President. This was kind of interesting. It's a National Geographic documentary, so I get to watch it on lovely Disney Plus, which I was like, this is a weird thing. Like, hey, watch Elemental and then Bobby Wine, The People's President. And this was pretty good. I mean, I found with a lot of the documentary watches, like, you know, they're like produced by like National Geographic or like Frontline or, you know, like ABC. Like, they're very based from like news programs. So, you know, I think as... definitely now is like a culture we're like kind of like programmed to this like Netflix documentary where it's like a whole narrative and like a story. These are a little more just like upfront news documentaries.
It's just like the facts, and they don't really try and weave a narrative around it. Yeah, and sometimes they can wind up being a little dry.
Yeah, so this one, like, is pretty wild. I guess if you don't know who Bobby Wine is, like, he's basically a pop star in Africa. And basically, he's like running for president, and can't even remember where in Africa it is. I watched it like 2 weeks ago. But basically, the guy that's president now has been president like since the 80s. And, you know, he's a dictator. Like, he's a pretty brutal dictator. And this guy, Bobby Wine, had like real support just because, you know, he's like the most famous artist in Africa, so that kind of helped him. And he really built like this movement, and obviously, as dictators do, like, they basically like attempt to kill him, they like destroy his campaign, do stuff like night before elections, arrest him and his entire team, you know, do stuff like shut all the internet and television down in the country, like during the 2 weeks of the election. And yeah, it's just like, it's pretty, you know, like most of these, we had a discussion last time too, like most of this Oscar stuff, like it's pretty heartbreaking. I don't know if this is like a happy ending documentary, but it just, you know, it gives you a perspective on, you know, what's going on in other parts of the world. Another documentary I watched was 20 Days in Mariupol. I don't know.
Mariupol, isn't it?
Mariupol, yeah.
Yeah.
What did you just say?
Yeah, I know, Mariupol. Which was, I really liked. So this is a news crew that was in the Ukraine for the first 20 days of the invasion. Yeah, this one was like, this was a choker. Like, you know, it was just some brutal stuff. Like, you know, Russia pretty much attacked hospitals and civilians before they attacked anyone else. And, you know, it's just like you're literally on screen watching like maternity wards with like babies in them just like being hit with bombs, and it's really, really wild. And I thought it was pretty well done. It's another one that's very like, I think this one is made by Frontline, so it's, you know, it's like an ABC News documentary, but it was pretty harrowing and heartbroken. I will mention I'm watching a pretty good one right now. I'm only halfway through it because it's like 2.5 hours, 3 hours. It's called To Kill a Tiger, and it's pretty interesting because it's actually co-produced with the Canadian Film Board. They co-produced it with India, and that one, it's very sad. It's like about a father that's like fighting the system in India. His daughter was like gang raped, and just India has like horrific rates of conviction for rape. Like, they look at it very differently there, and their laws are like pretty archaic on that stuff. You know, so much that like they make the decisions of are boys guilty of that by just like the village determining whether or not they're guilty, and it's usually no. They have like less than a 30% conviction rate, and they were saying that like a rape's reported every 20 minutes in India. But it's basically, I'm not done it yet, but I do know like there was like some big changes that this like father in the small community had happen because he, you know, didn't accept what originally happened to the perpetrators and like fought the system over this. So it's a rough watch so far, but it is pretty interesting, and you know, it's kind of cool to see like other countries, like they deal a lot with like this organization that's like gender equality rights in India that's like helping them fight the case. So it's just cool to see like cultural differences in those kind of programs and other countries. That's just like my nerdy sociology brain being stimulated.
Kind of going back to when you mentioned the Ukraine documentary and just like dictators and whatnot. Did you see Navalny from a couple of years ago?
No, I have that on a list to watch, though.
You should watch that. It's another one that obviously one of the production companies is CNN, but like I remember that documentary being pretty great, and considering he's finally been killed off by the Russian government, it might be a good time to kind of watch that documentary. It's pretty insane. It won like the best documentary feature that year it came out. I think it was in like 2022. But if you haven't seen, you know, a documentary about Ukraine and about Russia's involvement and all that sort of thing, it might be worth watching Navalny as well.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. And then lastly, I watched another Oscar one called Io Capitano, which is kind of weird. It's Italian, even though like it's not about Italians or anything. It's on documentary. It's I don't even know what you would call it. It's like a drama, but it's also very fantastical. Like there's a lot of, you know, fantastical things that happen in it that obviously wouldn't happen in real life. But it's pretty interesting. It's about like 16-year-olds in Dakar that are looking to immigrate to Italy to like work and make money to send back to their families. And, you know, it's about as as like cry piece as possible, like any movie like that would be, because of course, you know, the big thing about that travel is like basically, you know, like rebel gangs usually kidnap people and like put them into human trafficking situations. And like it's all that and more in this, and it's just like it's pretty hard to watch like stuff that, you know, watch these like 16-year-old kids, even though, like I said, it's on documentary. But the director, Matteo Garono, he based this off of like actual interviews with immigrants from Dakar. So like he used a lot of like real situations in it. obviously, I know there's a little controversy with this one because, of course, people thought it was kind of weird. This like white Italian guy was like making this movie that, you know, I won't hold back. That definitely makes Italy look really awesome. Like, oh yeah, we're accepting all the refugees and it's all perfect once they come here. But yeah, this is pretty good. And the star of it, I believe he pronounces his name Sudey Sar. He's fantastic. Like, I would love to see this kid in other movies. He's like totally believable. Just like a really great performance from him. I'm surprised someone that young did something with that much range in it.
Okay, so it's a narrative film. It's not a documentary.
Yeah, no, it is a narrative film.
Okay,
yeah.
I thought it was a documentary, kind of like bolstered with like some fantastical scenes or recreations.
Yeah,
or something,
no,
so,
it's a narrative, and like I said, he just basically based it off of actual accounts.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, so you know, that's my depressing one I've been watching, because that's all I've been watching is just depressing stuff. And Love is Blind, so I guess that, like...
It balances it out.
It really does, yeah.
But with that, I think it's time to get into our pick for this episode, which was Mike's pick. Mike, do you want to introduce this and tell us why you chose it?
My pleasure. Okay, so today we're doing, from 1962, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. And I picked this pretty much because I just thought it would be something different, you know?
Sure is.
We don't do that many, like, older movies or black and white or anything like that. Like, and when we do, we generally, like, enjoy them for the most part. And, you know, I just think it's kind of cool to dip into something a little different. And it's, you know, a little bit of a, like, queer classic too, so I thought, let's do it.
Let's kick it into the trailer, and we'll be back with the synopsis and first experiences.
Sister, sister, oh so fair, why is there blood all over your hair?
Whatever happened to Baby Jane? To seek the answer to that question, we will follow a man plotting a murder. Highly specialized work. Robert Aldrich has considerable experience in such matters. He has a dozen successful pictures to his credit. His stars are Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. The scene: an Italianate villa in a once fashionable section of Los Angeles. Its halls, once crowded with the bright, the beautiful, and the celebrated, now echo only to hectic whispers, the insistent call of a buzzer better left unanswered. A telephone that has become an object of fear. A supper tray that will not be touched. A window barred against the world. A hammer. A mute scrawl crying for help. From these elements, director Aldrich has fashioned a motion picture with a curious title: Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? Bette Davis is Jane Hudson. Joan Crawford is Blanche Hudson. But we must warn you, if you're long-standing fans of Miss Davis and Miss Crawford, this motion picture is quite unlike anything they have ever done. It is a bold essay in the art of the macabre, a venture to the ultimate reaches of terror. A motion picture definitely not for the squeamish. And we beg you, as the tension builds to the screaming point, as shock after shock assaults your senses, try to remember that this is only a motion picture. Try and remember.
Get away from me! Away from me!
No, we can't show you anymore. Only when you see Whatever Happened to Baby Jane will you know. And the answer is total suspense.
Whatever Happened to Baby Jane was directed by Robert Aldrich and written by Lucas Heller, and the story is as follows. After her involvement in a car accident that left her sister Blanche in a wheelchair some 30 years earlier, aging child star turned alcoholic Baby Jane Hudson cares for her sister in a decaying Hollywood mansion as she plots her return to stardom. But when Baby Jane discovers Blanche's plan to sell their home and commit Jane to a psychiatric hospital, Baby Jane handles this betrayal the only way she knows how, by confining Blanche to her upstairs upstairs bedroom and feeding her a well-balanced diet of parakeets and basement rats, and murdering the pesky housekeeper who can't help but poke her nose in where it doesn't belong. With the LAPD hot on her tail, Baby Jane takes her sister to the beach for some ice cream and fun in the sun before ultimately retaking her rightful place in the limelight.
So we'll get into our first experiences. Is this our first time seeing whatever happened to Baby Jane, or is this in our like canon of horror classics we rewatch all the time? Mike, this was your pick. We'll start with you.
It was my pick. Thank you. So yeah, I saw this for the first time, like purely by accident when I was like, I want to say 12 years old. It was on the movie channel, and I think it was this and then another movie by them with Bette Davis called Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte, which is also really good. Everyone should watch it. But yeah, so I obviously, when I was young, hadn't watched a lot of like kind of old classic movies, and the trailer that they had, like the little commercial for it before it came on, you know, it made it look really like kind of creepy and weird and different, and I was just like, oh, I'll keep this on. And I watched both of them and absolutely loved it, and it ended up, I feel like it explains a lot about me as a person that I watched that at that age and became obsessed with it. I'm like, it's like my love of, you know, rotting old actresses is definitely comes from this. So yeah, it's one of those that like I taped it off when I was a kid and like watched it over and over and over. So yeah. What about you, Ro? Have you ever seen it before?
So I've seen parts of it before. I remember this playing on like cable at like 3 a.m. Like I remember like waking up and then seeing parts of this on like the Space Channel or like, I don't know, Bravo or something, like channels that would play horror movies in the middle of the night.
It was definitely like a like showcase classic.
Yeah, maybe showcase or
something. I was
something.
gonna say, there's no way this is on the Space Channel. That'd be insane.
You guys weren't watching, 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. Space Channel, because they always played, like, Pumpkinhead and, like, shitty, like,
bro,
Pumpkinhead's
Pumpkinhead good. And whatever happened to Baby Jane, you know?
They used to play wild stuff in the middle of the night, man.
Very different types of horror.
I can confirm.
Colton,
yeah.
You didn't see the right cut, obviously. There's a tentacle cut of whatever happened to Baby Jane.
Oh, God, I missed that cut. Okay.
Yeah.
I forgot the chest bursting scene.
Can someone find that for me? Yeah. But, so I've never fully sat down and watched this. It's been on my radar. Like, I know lots of people that talk about it or reference it. So it's always been one that I've been meaning to watch. So now I got a chance to watch it. What about you, Colton?
Yeah, this is one that's always been on my radar. Being quite honest, though, I've never heard it really talked about in like a horror conversation. So I just figured it was like a drama, like something like Sunset Boulevard or something, which I think is I think this is very comparable to Sunset Boulevard. But yeah, it's something I've never seen. This was a first time watch for me. It was the third movie I watched yesterday, so maybe that'll have some effects on my later points / the conversation. But yeah, this was I didn't realize it was so long. I know we discussed it. It was like, oh no, it's over 2 hours long. It's black and white.
I did. I gave you advance warning.
Yeah, you did. I just completely disregarded that and forgot about it. So yeah, this was the first time I saw it. I was familiar with the title at the very least. What about you, Jill?
Yeah, this is my first experience with this movie. Didn't even know it existed, as I'm not really into like old classic movies. So yeah, first time.
Well, with that, let's get into the cut phone cords and dead animals of it all. Yeah, let's talk about whatever happened to Baby Jane. I want to start off with the actual beginning of whatever happened to Baby Jane.
The crying Jack in the Box, or like the I've written a letter to daddy vaudeville show?
Just all of it. So
okay.
Both of which are horrific.
Yeah, in their own way.
This didn't start off good for me. I just thought it was like an insane place to just cut in the movie. Like, I don't know. Did anyone have any issues? Like, I just thought the editing was wild in this. Like, I felt it cut to like so many things that had nothing to do with what I just watched, or especially the intro to this. I was like, what is going on? The cuts are so like abrupt and rough. It was not pleasing to my eyes.
I don't think it was that bad. I think you're just being a big baby about it.
Yeah.
Honestly,
it's called art, Rowan.
I never noticed it. Like, the editing is not something I would critique, other than maybe how long the overall edit winds up being. But this opening scene, I didn't. This opening scene, I didn't have any issues with. I actually wound up going back and rewatching like the first 2 sections of this movie after I finished it, like the 1917 and the 1935 section, just to see, like, it was more like contextually to see what I missed. Slash if the dialogue was doing anything else that I missed, then it was. So I was like, okay, this was, it's more clever on a rewatch if you watch those scenes. But no, I like the opening scene. I thought it was like suitably supposed to be kind of a little bit unnerving slash troublesome slash I very much like the scene where basically Blanche is kind of overshadowed for ice cream, and she basically vows that I won't forget. You bet I won't forget. It's almost like this. She'll hold this until the day she dies, essentially, that she'll never forget how her sister always stole the limelight, So I like the opening scene. I thought it worked. I mean,
it did work.
I thought it was
horrifying.
so fucking creepy. I'm like, you know what? I feel like, it was like an early example of like recognizing how fucking creepy stage parents and like child actors and stuff are, like it's just, it's still repeating today.
Yeah, I got like the pageant parent vibe from like what was happening here. Like obviously it wasn't maybe as troublesome as like a beauty pageant for children, because it's like, okay, it's just a girl singing and dancing. But I guess there was just aspects of it of like the song itself. I've written a letter to daddy in heaven while he's playing the piano for him. Just the way like obviously nowadays we have like the sexualized term of daddy as well, so it's just like kind of troublesome when I was watching it as well. Yeah, I thought it was like a decent little intro to the movie, like a little bit unnerving. Yeah,
I did like the girl, like that. I like the girl that plays Baby Jane, like just because I thought she did a good job of playing like a child performer, and then also like obviously being like super bratty and
being a little
I make
bitch.
The money so I can have what I want. Yeah.
I was like, I mean,
she's
where's
not
the
wrong.
lie, right?
Yeah.
They're not holding it in like a trust and, working her to the bone and chaining her in the basement. Or maybe they are. I don't know. I would like a prequel where maybe that is happening.
I more so like the next section after this I thought was an interesting section. Like I just thought it was a decent opening to the movie, but like kind of having the studio execs sitting in the screening room watching. At the time I was kind of confused. I didn't know who they were watching, what they were watching, what it was. I assumed it was Blanche or Baby Jane, but I just don't have like the visual knowledge of like who Joan Crawford and who Bette Davis is, just from like a visual. So I didn't know who was who on the screen at the time, right? So it took a while for me to realize like they were watching a Baby Jane movie and kind of criticizing her accent and how like her performance was bad and all that sort of thing. But specifically the studio exec who's like, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, smoking a cigar and just like he was just like in misery watching the movie.
It was that was the studio exec in Madam Web screaming.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, we need to change all of this,
otherwise. Oh boy, oh boy.
Yeah, oh boy, oh boy. Yeah, it was just, I thought this scene was interesting because like obviously I like all the like Hollywood screening stuff, like, reviewing the movies. But it was mostly the exposition after the fact, like the fact that like the projector, the projectionist, they were like delivering exposition for us to like know like, oh, Baby Jane movies are flopping compared to this. Or then they have the whole like walk and talk where they're like, oh, Blanche Hudson's the biggest thing in pictures nowadays, and she forces us to have a contract where Baby Jane has a movie for everyone she has and all this stuff.
What a wild contract.
I know. I was like, this is the longest bit of exposition ever. And also I made a note of like, I really hope her forcing her sister to have like a movie made for every one that she makes is malicious in some regard. And I don't know like if we 100% get with that. Like I don't know if there was like I know you're less talented than me, so I'm going to make sure like you have terrible movies while I have good ones.
Yeah.
But there is a level of maliciousness obviously to Blanche that we figure out in the end that I was like, okay, maybe there is a little bit there. Like you could just either read it as like she's a good person or it's malicious. But obviously that sequence like culminates in the split doll on the ground headshot, the whole car thing, which I completely misread what was happening in that scene when I made like the note of like, I was like, oh, I bet one of the studio execs killed Baby Jane off, and I completely misread the beginning of this movie because it starts like with that. You get the whole credit sequence. It looks like Jane was like hit next to the fence or whatever. And then it says yesterday as the big subtitle. And I was like, okay, so it's just basically a movie that we're leading up to like the event that killed Baby Jane. And it took me a while.
Oh, so you thought it was going back in time.
Yes, I thought it was going back in time to essentially like the day before this happened.
The ending of the movie would have been the car crash,
But what they meant was yesterday as in like in 1962.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was watching this and I was just like, this is weird. Like, what is happening with this movie? And it took me like an extra 5 minutes before they finally like admitted like, oh, Baby Jane is responsible for that car crash that crippled Blanche. I was so confused in the beginning of this movie.
That is wild that you like thought so deeply into that.
Well, yeah, I was just so confused. I was watching.
But yesterday is a weird, like, traditionally, like your standard is like today or present day or something like that.
I thought it was like very straightforward. I think it's because you were watching other movies, then you watch this one, and you're probably watching more artsy,
so you think someone
movies.
You think someone showing a murder, like let's say we haven't seen the movie. So showing a murder and then a big subtitle coming up that says yesterday, you think that's obvious that we should be like, oh, that happened February 25th, 2024.
I mean, I got it when I was watching it.
And also you got to remember they established already this is 1917. This is 1935. This is yesterday. I figured it was yesterday before the
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, I was going to say
confused.
I was confused for a good 5 minutes of the movie there. Like, once again, they make it very obvious that, like, oh, we jumped ahead by, like, 30 years, right? But it's just, once again, it's, like, my unfamiliarity with these actresses. I couldn't just, like, visually get it from, like, them instantly. That it was like, oh, we're 30 years later now or whatever, right?
That's
I had no
fair.
idea.
Well, and that's what I'm kind of curious about, and I'm figuring, Mike, you're probably the guy to talk about this or explain it to me. Because, like, one of the things I felt, like, I was wondering, like, would this movie, would I connect with it more if I had more of some sort of like recognition or connection to Bette Davis or Joan Crawford? Like, because to me, I was like, yeah, okay. But like, other than the brief things I've read that they didn't like each other, like, I have no idea what these guys were like as performers in like other movies. Like, was this totally off script for the kind of stuff they would normally do, or like were they in these kind of like psychological horror movies normally? Like, I guess I just don't know enough about them to be like, because to me I kind of thought, oh, maybe the whole thing is like, they're in dramas or something, like they would never normally be in something like this, and then so it's kind of wild that they're in like a horror movie essentially. I mean, it is a horror movie, but so, yeah, I guess I just like, could you maybe, I don't know, speak on the importance of Joan Crawford and Bette Davis?
Okay, I mean, the thing is that, like, one of the reasons why I think this works and people love it so much is partially because it is essentially a film about them, because at the time they would have been kind of like later in their careers when they weren't getting as much work, and they were both, like, Bette Davis especially, like, pretty much the movie stars for decades, like in the early days. Like, I don't even know who to compare them to. It's so funny because a friend, Willow, sent me something earlier, and it was like one of her old Facebook posts, and it was a picture she took of her TV, and she was watching a Bette Davis movie, and the caption was something like, you're a huge star when you get top billing before the title even comes up. And I was like, that's so funny, because it's true. Like, they were both literally like massive stars who were, on the decline, because, you're moving into the 60s, and that you're moving out of that kind of era of like the big studio,
they're just
sort of like contract.
Essentially.
Exactly.
What the movie's kind of commenting on, right?
And yeah, it's very like meta in a way, like not that they, tried to kill each other, but you know, it is meta in that it was essentially, whether wanted to or not, like commenting on their careers, right? So it would have been huge because it reignited both of their careers, but especially Bette Davis. And like she did every type of movie. Like, you know, they were just banging out movies all the time, like of every genre. But like after this, she definitely was more inclined to be in kind of like creepy movies or like psychological thrillers or just movies that were very dark and, you know.
Well, and like I did think, like, I thought Bette Davis was really good in this. Like, I thought
she's phenomenal. Yeah, she's literally, you know, one of the, like, if you made a list of like the top 10 movie stars of all time, she would be on it.
Yeah, like her performance is super unhinged in it, and I was like, yeah, I can kind of see, because like I know that, you know, Baby Jane, like that character, you know, I knew even before reading this or you know, doing anything for this episode, like I knew that character is, like, you know, on lots of lists you see come up of like iconic villains and horror villains, and so I definitely, you know, like I could see why. Like I was like, yeah, she's fantastic on this, and like I thought Joan Crawford was fine. I mean, obviously it's like a way more muted.
She gets less to do, yeah.
But I don't know. To me, like Joan Crawford, I don't know. I was kind of like, I could take it or leave it. Like,
oh, listen, you just need to watch some other Joan Crawford movies. That's all.
What about though the wheelchair scene when she's just like spinning around? I was gonna say screaming.
She gets her moments though. She doesn't get many moments to like go unhinged because of like physical limitations, but that scene, like, she's like, fuck this is my moment.
Well, I think that specific shot just sticks out as well too, because they it's like an overhead shot, like with the camera up on the ceiling watching her spin around and stuff, where, you know, there's not a lot of shots like that in the movie. Right? It's just something that feels very different.
I just can't remember in the movie. Like, I know that she's in the wheelchair, but I can't remember where she lost her voice, where she could just say, hey, you outside of my window, let's just end this now.
Or, hey, I'm just going to decide to pull myself down the stairs a lot sooner in this movie.
There's just like a lot of wild decisions in this. And I was like, yeah, I feel like these weren't really well thought out. Like, you know, we're throwing messages on paper out of a window that, like, there's no glass in front. Like, it's just like you can hang out it and holler at the woman. And, like, at no point does she ever decide to do this. She does it once, and she literally just goes, hey, like, she says it so softly that no one, not even anyone in her room, could hear it, let alone the woman in the driveway.
Also, when she's eating that drawer full of chocolates in her sister's room, I love that scene. It was so funny. Like, that she has, first of all, a drawer full of chocolates, and secondly, that she's like starving, so she goes to her sister's room and just like starts eating her chocolates. And then she discovers, like, you know, documents and stuff. But I really love that scene. Yeah.
And I'm just thinking of the tummy ache she would have had, but that's just
well, and if she was smart, she would have kind of like savored them and brought some into her room, and like, because she knows that she's not being fed. But I will say, like, scenes like that, I thought the suspense was built up very good, because, like, I was like, oh, you know, Baby Jane obviously, like, planted these chocolates, and, like, there's gonna be something wrong with them, or, like, I did think the movie
they're like a laxative chocolate. She's just like shitting her pants the whole time.
That's not what I was thinking, but that would be pretty wild. That would take this movie in a whole other direction. Maybe far campier than it ever expected to be. But yeah, like, you know, I want to say, because I went a little hard at the beginning. Like, I didn't overly, there was stuff I did enjoy about this. I do want to shout out, I thought Maddie Norman, who plays Elvira, was really good. In fact, I thought
she was amazing.
I thought she was one of the better, like, next to Bette Davis. Like, I thought she was one of the better performers in this. Just, like, believable, and like, I connected with her character, so she did her job to me.
Yeah, I kind of wish she, like, pushed back a little bit quicker. Like, obviously, they have the one time where she comes and she's like, oh, go home, you can have a day off, and then she leaves, and there's nothing done with it. She just leaves, and then there's the next time she comes back, and then she decides to get involved. It was kind of like they already had that conversation with her where it's like, baby Jane is like, she's starting to drink a lot, she's losing her mind, like, does she know that you're going to be selling the house? Where is she going? Are you putting her in the, you know, the mental hospital or whatever? Where it was just like, there was enough signs there that I think she would have instantly been like, oh, this is strange, I can't see Blanche, I'm not allowed in the house, I'm getting the day off. Where I feel like that character, especially for like how involved she gets, like when you get to the third act, may have like tried to do something else at that point, you know, called in like a welfare check or something, if that existed back then, I don't know. But like there was an element there where I was like, oh, I kind of wish, I understand for like the movie you can just have her turned away, but like the character, if she existed in real life, I think she would have been pretty skeptical just at that first moment.
Yeah.
And like seeing like baby Jane's like appearance, the way she looked, and like, you know, how disheveled she was and whatnot, it just, I think she would have got it a little bit sooner.
Oh my god, her makeup, by the way, like so good, so caked
like,
on,
iconic.
I love it.
The little heart on her cheek the entire time.
Marina, Marina and the fucking diamond.
Oh my god. It's so funny though. I enjoyed, like, to your point, I actually sort of also enjoyed Elvira's like, well, it's my job. I'm clocking out. I'm done. Goodbye.
Yeah,
I'll come
there
back
is
and
an
be
element of
concerned
that
when I'm
as
getting
well.
paid the next. I'm like,
yeah,
you know what?
I'm
Sometimes you just gotta clock out. Yeah,
I understand that as well. But it's just like, once again, the third act where clearly she cares enough, you know, to literally put her life in harm's way and pry open the door with a hammer, essentially. You know, it's like, I just figured the character is so smart and she does such a good job portraying her. It's just, I would have liked some minor intervention a little bit earlier, I guess.
Especially where she mentions like the medication and she's like, oh, what did you give her or whatever. Like the fact that she caught on to that like so quickly, like immediately, kind of insinuates that she should have known something beforehand.
Yeah, there's like some little like details like that I was just kind of like, I feel like this movie gets into a point, and maybe this is where my negatives of the movie are, where I just find it gets kind of slow or kind of just spinning its wheels for a while, where I feel like there's just a section for like 40 minutes of this movie where it's like, we just wanted to be a chamber piece of these two women in this house, and it's essentially like they're just going day to day, and it kind of just repeats beats over and over. And to be fair, once again, there's an element of like, well, maybe they're trying to drive the audience a little bit crazy to feel what Blanche is feeling, or, you know, you kind of want to show off baby Jane's like descent into madness a little bit more, like how much she cares about getting her voice right and stuff. But it's just like, as someone who was watching this for the first time, it was just like, I didn't know where it was going, and it was very much like there was a good section in this middle where it was just like, it's taking a long time for her to get more crazy than delivering the rat to her sister, right? Like there's a good passage of time between the rat and between her like beating Blanche with the phone, you know? Like there's a good bit of movie there.
Oh, for sure,
I was literally like, I checked the time at one point. I was like, I still got an hour left of this. Like, where does this go from here? And to be fair, it doesn't really go that much crazier than like where we are by like an hour and 15 minutes in the movie. And I think that's kind of one of my issues just with kind of older films in general, where it's like, I'm one of those people where I'm like pretty well watched if you go from like 2010 onwards, pretty much. Once you start getting back to like even like 80s and 70s movies, like I'm not well versed at all. And I find a lot of them, the pacing, very hard for me to get through. I find myself like pulling out my phone or like reading Twitter or messaging people, which is why I feel like a movie like this I should have saw for the first time in theaters, because there's like, once again, I got bored.
You can't do anything.
I got bored, you can't
distract yourself.
Yeah, I got bored after an hour and 15 minutes, and then I was checking my phone every now and then like basically you're just, the spell of the movie is broken, or at least for someone like me who like I devote like full attention when I'm trying to watch something. And that's why like I have a really hard time watching old movies. It's just like, it's a different time. There's very few that feel modern. Like obviously something like Citizen
you're going to have to
Kane
just,
or, you know.
It's like one of those things where you have to train yourself how to watch it, essentially. Like you got to
it's
like you got to exercise it, and I get it.
I was gonna say that's why like someone like Willow, who's like just so well watched of every period of movie. I mean, she's also like, she can write incredibly well, but it's just like I'm envious of her ability to just watch like any movies from any period and actually appreciate it. Because for me, I have such a hard time. It's like I think Citizen Kane is good. I don't think it's like amazing, but like I really like 12 Angry Men or Sunset Boulevard. There are examples. It's just it's few and far in between, and it's always like the most normie basic example that I like. Right? It's like, oh, of course you like Sunset Boulevard. Everybody does, you know? Like, yeah. So it's just when I was watching this, it was just like, oh, this definitely has that pacing that I have a really hard time sitting through and giving my like whole attention to. But yeah, Jill, you were going to say something there?
Yeah, I actually had like the opposite experience. I loaded this up on my computer, sat down with it on one monitor, loaded up World of Warcraft on the other monitor. And I was like, this is an old movie. It's black and white. It's like 2+ hours long. There's no fucking way I can do this. Actually ended up not even playing WoW the entire time. I was hooked.
Oh my God.
That whole
Shook.
time I was watching
gagged.
it. Yeah, I loved it, actually. I was just like, cool. It had my attention. And I think that had to do mostly with like the acting for me. The acting was insanely well done. Jane, like the way she's so fucking delusional and mean, her performance is awesome. Her neighbor calls her like, the fat washed up like actress or whatever she calls her, and she does it so well. She's like always slouched over, she's like scuffing around in her little slippers, and she's just so good. And then another like highlight of her for me is whenever she gets on the phone and pretends to be her sister.
That's
I was like, I want you to say the voices.
So good. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not taking any away from Bette
I'm just saying
she's awesome in this
I was
movie.
shocked.
It's just I got what she was doing, pretty quick. She's so great that within 10 minutes of the movie, like basically when she's talking to her baby Jane doll and like singing a little bit, and you can tell her voice is kind of hoarse and kind of sucks now and that sort of thing, like the whole trajectory of basically where this character is going to a certain degree. I will say there were some little surprises, and like the ending I think is particularly strong. It was just I was like, yeah, I agree with you. The acting is excellent in the movie, but I was just kind of waiting for it to develop. And I think, like, once again, I think part of this allure as well is just a familiarity with both of these actresses, where it's like, this is insane to see them together. Yeah. This is like Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger together for the first time in this movie. Like, this is crazy. How are they together?
Pretty much.
For me, where it's like, I have no familiarity, right? So
Locked Up is my whatever happened to Baby Jane.
Oh my God.
Escape Plan, isn't it?
Escape Plan. I don't know.
Yeah, how dare you Locked Up? This isn't some Tom Hardy movie.
I don't know.
I just
watching this, I was like, this movie, I think narratively wise to me, I was like, this barely has an hour, 20 minutes worth of stuff in it. Like, if this was an hour and 20 minutes, I might still think it's too long.
Yeah, for me, I'd push to like an hour 40, but I agree that I still feel like there's a lot of bloat here. Yeah. And once again, I think, obviously, this movie, a lot of people herald as like a masterpiece. So like, there's obviously a rationale and a reason behind that. Even if it is just like, these are some of the biggest stars at the time, so people just want to watch them. It's just like, for me, as I was watching, I kept waiting for it to develop. I'm like, all right, the piano player is over for the second time now. Like, what are we doing? I understand that she wants to pay this guy and get her show back on the road, but there just wasn't really a development. Like, there wasn't like this narrative thrust to keep it going. It just, to me, it's like, this is like the second or third time I've seen this similar scene, like within the last 10, 20 minutes, I guess.
I just kept thinking, like I was thinking like something like Dracula or something that's like, what, like a cool like 110, 115 maybe. And I was like, banner from beginning to end, like no filler, nothing. And I was like, to me.
Yeah, but girl, they cut so much out of Dracula. Jesus. It's like 5 pages of the book.
Dracula could have been a 3-hour movie easy. Yeah. If
to
they
me,
wanted
that's
to.
the thing. As a film, they cut a bunch.
They did, yes.
Where they definitely didn't in this one. Like, this one was just like, we're going to keep everything in. And to me, I was just like, if this was an hour and 20 minutes of like this psychological thriller from start to end with your twist at the end, have your little, like, even though I thought it was chaotic, like, I'm not totally putting down the beginning. Like I said, I like the girl performing and like the brattiness, getting used to that character. But I was just like, if this had been so much shorter, like, I just think like this is like a like automatic like top 5 of all time. like for everybody, I think. Like I think maybe that's what frustrated me is for me, I saw so much potential in it, and then I just didn't feel like it lived up to the hype or potential for me, which I don't know. I didn't read any like opinions on this, but I will say, which is gonna sound weird because it should be something I like. I really didn't like the score in this. I thought it did a disservice to the film. Like, I get the film is campy in the first place. I love a campy score, but I thought the score, it basically let me know any twist and turn like 3 minutes before it happened. And like, I get like a different time period and all that kind of stuff.
I was like, they all kind of did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all revealing the movie because audiences like can't even fathom like what is going to happen in this movie, right? Like, you know.
To me, I was like, I just really don't think the score is like amazing. And you know, I haven't seen a ton of older movies, but I've seen some older movies and there's lots of scores I enjoy. I just didn't think this one was
I'm so sorry that it wasn't a analog synth score, Rowan. I apologize that it was not.
We need some disaster piece in here.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I'm sorry that you're not going to go order the Mondo limited edition vinyl reissue, okay?
Jesus. Do better. What happened to Baby Jane?
Can we talk about the subgenre that this spurned, apparently, that I've never heard of until I checked the Wikipedia page? Psycho-biddy. I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard those words together. Mike has for sure. But
yeah, of course.
I was literally like, what the hell does that mean? And obviously like a psycho old lady, but I was just like, I've never heard of this as a subgenre. And I was like, I haven't seen anything from the subgenre, of course. And then I checked it out and I was like, okay, I have seen a bit, but I just never recognized that this is a thing. So yeah, the psycho-biddy subgenre or hagsploitation.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite words in the universe.
Yeah, so what are some other movies then? Because
okay, well, for whatever reason, they got Rosemary's Baby listed, but like she's not like an old Hollywood starlet in that movie. Like she's still not that old. I mean, she's mother. But they got Last Night in Soho listed, which is a spoiler for Last Night in Soho. I'm sorry. Misery was listed. Some people had like Friday the 13th listed, which the original.
That's actually interesting. Yeah.
Some people had the original listed. Sunset Boulevard's on there. I mean, there was a bunch of stuff I just haven't seen. One list had Hereditary on there, which I was like, I understand that the grandmother kicked off, you know, the horror in the movie, but that is a stretch.
It is. Well, it's just so funny because, like, I mentioned earlier, the double feature that I saw when I was like 12 of this, they followed this up with Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte, which would have easily fit on that list.
Yeah, and it probably is. Like, if you look at the Wikipedia, I scrolled through it and I was like, I recognize 5 or 6 of these out of the 100 on there or whatever, right? Like, clearly, like, after this movie came out, it very much became to, like, the forefront of that sort of movie. I mean, there's loads of examples of it, but I was just like, I'm surprised I missed like such a big subgenre and just kind of like, I like horror, I like thrillers. I mean, I like a little bit of everything, but still I was like, I've never heard the term psycho-biddy. And I was just like, come again? When I read that on the Wikipedia, I was like, what are you talking about? So yeah, I was shocked that it was a thing.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like I know that because when I saw this, I became obsessed with the old actresses in movies and losing their shit and chewing up the scenery.
Yeah, I essentially saw like people said that like Bette Davis's performance is so good in this movie that she birthed her own subgenre in it. That it's just like psycho-biddy only exists because she nailed this performance so hard. You know, that I was just like, I can't believe that and I don't know, whether or not I love the movie or anything, I did discover a new subgenre that I was like, what on earth? Psycho-biddy. So
yeah, now stuff. you gotta make a list now of like Letterboxd like watch list of psycho-biddy exploitation movies.
I was sitting there and I was like, is X a psycho-biddy movie?
Yeah,
an older lady. You know, like I was literally just trying to think of any horror.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I was sitting there and I was just trying to think of like, you know, where the villain or, you know, whatever of the movie winds up being an older lady, which obviously lots of times in horror we use that to have like, you have the wrinkly naked old lady, you know, we're all disgusted by the older lady's body essentially as a jump scare in these movies. So I was trying to think of like, oh, is there any of these movies where like the older lady's developed as like the villain and she's kind of lost her mind? I was like, oh, maybe X a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
listeners,
it was interesting.
Listeners better look out for when Colton proposes the themed month, psycho-biddies. I was
Where's the alliteration there?
Yeah,
Psycho-biddy.
Yeah, I'm like, it's not gonna work.
December.
Psycho-biddy September.
Burr, there we go, yeah.
Rabid Grannies from Trauma. That's my contribution.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
All right.
That's my pick.
You're 100%. He's slowly just going through his trauma checklist,
right.
like which one's gonna
It's
get in here,
basically
which one's gonna
most
get in here.
trauma movies. But I want to have a conversation about this English guy,
Edwin.
What's going on here? Like, I was like, did this movie even really need this guy or this like plot line?
I don't really think so. But
Like you said, I think
no,
it just
no.
it just makes that middle part like so bloated for no reason.
Okay, first of all, they needed a reason to get her out of the house and get her excited about her dreams. Second of all, we needed that atrocious performance. And I love watching Edwin get the ick, like listening to her sing. He's like, oh, fuck, this is horrible, but I really need the money. I thought it was hilarious.
Also, the hallmark of like, she needs her piano gay around and they need to like take the time and establish that he, lives with his mother and he's a mama's boy. And I think it's essential to any.
Essential.
I think you need the beat. Like, I think he needs to be there. I don't know if we need, like, the multiple scenes of him back with his mom and him talking about the money and all this shit.
I
and then going back.
loved it, because I feel like he was, like, I feel like he was able to deal with her because, I don't know, I was getting vibes from his mother, so.
Oh, it's like a 5-minute
issues.
sequence of them, like, going through the newspaper. Oh, you're gonna be my secretary. Let's listen to the whole phone call. Let's have stuff afterwards. Just, like, stuff like that. It's like, she literally could have been like, oh, yeah, so-and-so responded to my, post in the paper, and here he is. Like, it didn't have to be this whole thing. And then him even coming back, like, drunk and all that stuff is just like, I don't know. I didn't really need him a whole lot. I think you need it for certain regards. Like Jill said, you need kind of like a reason or like a push for her to want to continue.
Yeah, it was mostly just the length that I was like,
Sure.
I loved him. I thought it was nice to get because like I kind of felt like the first few times I watched it, I was like, why didn't they like have the neighbors involved more, especially like the younger daughter, because she seemed like really interested in like, oh, how come we've never met her and stuff, and then it's like the outside kind of like intervention and the kind of break from just the two of them that you get is actually ends up being Edwin instead, which is, an interesting, like I said, I totally get it being like long. I love the mundanity of all those things. It's like a circular loop of days, but like I totally get that it adds like 10 extra minutes to the movie.
For me, it was just like basically what you said. It was just like I was expecting the neighbors to get a lot more involved.
Yeah.
Like they clearly know all the details of their life. She seems like cursorily like interested in like what's happening with the sisters and stuff like that. I expected there to be just more of them, and then basically they kind of get phased out as Edwin moves in. And like once again, I understand like his need to be there for a couple of scenes, but he becomes like a supporting character that I'm like, is he gonna be like a love interest here? Like we get in the Bette Davis Edwin romance scene here, like what's happening on here? Like it was just, I don't know, it went on for a while.
Edwin is a homosexual.
Well,
100%.
100. But anyway, yes, I totally get it. I get it.
I felt like the scene where he was stood on the ground and she got up on the stair and was like completely like, in kissing height. I thought maybe she was interested or seeing if she still had.
Well, I mean, maybe she was interested. Yeah.
Yeah. I was curious. I was like, oh, is the movie trying to develop this?
She's also one of these people that like tries to kiss her gay bestie before he came out to her. Right? Except she's like a million years old, and
dude, I kissed my gay bestie once. We were both just like, nah, this is awful, and then we never spoke of it again.
And then you played I've Written a Letter to Daddy. But you're like, where's my daddy? Capital D.
Fuck.
Do we want to have a conversation about this twist ending? Did it work for you? Did it make sense for you?
Well, what's the quote? Like, what's the twist that you're?
Well, I guess to me the twist.
Oh, like the revelation right at the end.
The revelation that that it was actually not Baby Jane's fault. That this accident happened.
Well, I love it.
It was all Blanche. You liked it.
Literally, if that wasn't in the movie is like the movie is literally like just bad for me at that point. Like it's literally like the ending portion of this movie is so strong that I think it like elevated like the hour of kind of boredom before that, where I was like, this is such a good payoff where I felt the need that I had to go back and rewatch the earlier sections
to look
see,
for the breadcrumbs,
to see if it was there, right? Like I think it's great. I love that the idea of like she like admits that it's like, yeah, I was trying to kill you, but you dodged out of the way and I pulled my body over there to like kind of frame you and just let you take the heat, let your career get ruined, let like you just like beat yourself up over it for years. It's like such a crazy idea that I loved it. And then like Baby Jane's response of just like, you know, oh, what you're saying is our entire life
we could have been friends. Yeah. Oh, it's tragic.
Sad.
It's so tragic.
It also feels
she gets
meta.
Her ice cream.
Yeah, it feels meta in a way, is because once again, just assuming these people had like a real rivalry and a distaste for one another. It's just like obviously by making this movie together and then, you know, it basically bolstering both their careers to kind of have a career after the fact as like aging starlets. It's kind of like that feels like a meta line as well. If they were really nasty to each other, I don't know if they were.
Yeah.
But like for me, when I was watching, I was like, oh, that's a really strong beat. And I like that Baby Jane like reverts to essentially like her childhood state, because that's the one thing we haven't really discussed throughout the movie. Bette Davis is kind of, obviously she's really catty and she's like, you know, plotting and scheming and all that, but she also is just very babyish the entire movie. Like, you know, she's very much like
very regressed.
It's like childhood
I have a note about it.
Yeah, where it's like,
well,
at
and
this
actually,
moment,
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
She, well, I mean, and you know, the stardom is obviously traumatic, and like think about all the like ruined child actors and shit, like from the history of Hollywood up to today. But I've always wondered, and I don't think I usually just mostly watch this alone. Occasionally, like I've showed it to people, but like I was like getting, and here's the thing, I actually wanted to read the book too, and I never have, so I don't know like kind of what details they may have cut out, but this might be like a total long shot, but I was getting like whiffs of like, was she abused as a child as well? Because I feel like I was getting weird vibes from the father, and I'm like, did something go on here? And then like, you know, when he dies, you know, she kind of like just stays locked in that like childhood.
Yeah, for me, like
state
obviously
of mind.
There could be some sort of abuse that obviously links that, but it could also be like she lost her father shortly after that period we saw in the beginning. Like, we don't know. She does mention that she lost her dad at a young age. And the fact that she continues to sing this, like, Letters to Daddy song, which essentially is about writing a letter to your dad when he's dead, is kind of like, yeah, like, either this really messed her up, losing her father at a young age, especially since he was so, like, integral to her fame and to her performance, or it is like, there probably is the explanation for some form of abuse. I mean, loads of children that have been abused, they're just kind of very childlike for their entire life, right? So yeah, when I saw that too, I was like, it's interesting that like right after she says like, oh, we could have been friends, her response is like, well, let's just go get ice cream, because once again, we saw like when she was a kid, that was what she really wanted, was ice cream. So it's like, well, I'm not gonna like address my feelings, we're just gonna go eat the ice cream. You know, that I was like, oh,
she's
okay.
Like, I never got to be normal, so ice cream is the closest I get to like, you know, just being a kid, being not traumatized and exploited.
Yeah, and I think with this whole like sequence as well, like there's a couple of beats with the police officers talking to like the people at the bar and all that stuff that like once again I think that's unneeded. We already know the police are like after her, and like we know like the bolo's out and like people are looking for her and stuff. We know that just from like a radio broadcast. But I do really like how it ultimately ends, where it's essentially like everyone on the beach is like slowly noticing her, knowing that something's up, the police presence is there, and then she just like once again puts on a performance. I loved like that little beat. And especially that it's overshadowing her sister, maybe dead on the ground. You know,
yeah, exactly. That like, shot like overhead is like wild.
Yeah, it's so good. Like I once again, the ending to me is like completely strong. It's like the linchpin of the movie. That like if that ending sequence doesn't work, I mean, like, or if they didn't do that, I would be completely out on this movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I posed the question. I do also like the ending.
Okay.
I was just seeing if anyone didn't. No,
We're always playing devil's advocate.
Fair enough. I do like the ending. Now, I will say, I've got to suspend disbelief that she crawled out of the car and, dragged her body, then dragged another body while dragging her body. But you know what? I have to also believe that
she didn't drag the body, two bodies though. No, like she jumped out of the way. Bette Davis was drunk and saw that like the car was coming. She moved out of the way. And then Blanche positioned herself
Yeah.
And Bette Davis just continued like partying and doing whatever. What I will say about that
I thought
is,
she put her in the car. I thought that's what she was saying.
No.
Okay,
she just basically put
They
herself
said
at the
several times that they found her in a hotel or something days later.
And that's kind of what this sequence I think was missing to me. Not necessarily the after part of like at the hotel. I wish we got a scene of them in 1935 like kind of like partying and living it up.
Yeah.
And like basically like knowing like that there's like some animosity between them and just kind of left it a little bit more ambiguous at that point. It's just it very much
that
just, like,
section of the movie was a little bit too short.
It's very short. Yeah, it's the producers talking and delivering all this exposition and then the car. That's it. So it's like I would have actually liked to see the scene of Baby Jane being incredibly drunk and embarrassing her and her basically being like, I don't even want to be associated with this woman. I've been the one that's keeping her career alive. I would have liked to see a little bit of that animosity between them, I guess, because we never really got that at that point in the movie.
Yeah.
We got it as a kid, which once again does establish it. And, I still read into it, like, like hopefully she's taking vengeance at some point. But it's like, I wouldn't have minded seeing that, I think.
When Jane is downstairs, like getting food ready for Blanche, and she's like about to call her a miserable bitch, but then the buzzer goes off and like blurps out the bitch. I thought that was so clever and funny.
Oh yeah, because they were not swearing then. I it's like such a weird moment too, because like there's nothing else like that in the whole movie, so it's really like jarring in a way.
She was a menace with that buzzer. Also,
oh yeah.
It was like the guy in Breaking Bad.
Yes,
with the
with
bell.
the bell. Yeah,
yeah.
Hector Salamanca.
There you go.
Just like him.
I just want to say one thing before we go into rating, and this is kind of aimed at you, Ro, but it's just a general question. Do we not see how this influenced Rob Zombie, especially House of a Thousand Corpses?
Yeah, I can.
Like, literally, her name is Baby. The fucking rotten makeup is, like, essentially what Baby wears. The fucking curly wig, like, the grotesquerie. Yeah, I feel like, and using older actresses that are sort of, like, were famous back in the day, I feel like Rob Zombie fucking loves this movie. I want to, like, call him and be like, Rob, thoughts on whatever happened to Baby Jane? I know you love it.
Zombert.
Bobbert.
Yeah, I was going to say, I could see the through line there. I mean, I think there's just through lines everywhere. I can also see where, when they were making this, they definitely were like, yeah, I'm the next Hitchcock, bitch. And
bitchcock, if you will.
Oh shit.
Oh,
but with that, let's land the plane and get into rating this. If you are new to the program, our rating system is nay, okay, yay, or slay. Mike, this was your pick, so we'll start with you. What would you rate 1962's Whatever Happened to Baby Jane?
Well, Baby Jane, more like Slayby Jane. Baby Slay. Anyway, it's a slay. I'm gonna like see myself out right now. I think it's, masterful, and I mean, obviously it has some like pacing issues and stuff, but like, again, in this period when I was that age, I was watching like the classic movie channel, so I was like kind of getting more used to that, and it just didn't bother me at all. And it's just my personal lore. This movie's so personal to me, and it's important, and I just love, like, over the years of watching movies and like TV shows and shit like that, like, I see references to it everywhere, and I just love it. I just love how it kind of like permeated the culture, and it has just become that like kind of queer camp classic. But it's also just like a really cool, creepy, gothic thriller. So, I don't really have anything to say about it, except I think it's wonderful, and I will never stop watching it. Colton, what are your thoughts?
Oh, you had to throw it to me. This is one of those movies where I will admit that I'm likely wrong on my rating, which I don't do very often, but I will admit that I do think this is probably a great movie. I do. It's just I have to be true to like me watching it that I didn't enjoy it very much. I think for a movie like this, I would have had to see it in like the right circumstance, like in a theater or something where I can actually appreciate it, where it's not the third movie I watched that day, where it's not, I'm starting at 11:30 at night or something. Like this to me felt like very long. And I will admit, like just as like a personal kind of like thing, I just have an issue watching old movies in general, right? It's very rare I see a movie that's like before 2000 that I even think is like excellent, right? Like that's the thing. It's like, it's just, I find the pacing for a lot of these movies hard to sit through. But once again, I'll echo, like, I think the ending of the movie is excellent. It's enough that it was like very much like I have to go and rewatch the next 20 minutes of the beginning of the movie to basically see if this was set up. Like, did I pick up on what I was supposed to be picking up? Like, did I miss things? And I did like that it was all there. It's just, yeah, for me, I gotta say, like, I was bored. I was bored after an hour and 15 minutes, and then it goes on for another hour. And yeah, like, I think Bette Davis is amazing. I think the ending is great. But for me, it's an okay. Which, once again, it's sacrilegious to say, but, like, once again, I will say I'm probably wrong. I might rewatch this at some point and enjoy it. It's just at this point in time, I didn't really enjoy watching this movie a whole lot. So, yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be everyone on my Letterboxd loves this movie. So once again, I'm sure I'm in the minority, but to me, it's an okay. Let's throw it to Jill because I'm sure she's more positive on the movie.
Well, Mike, you are 2 for 2 with bringing in the old movies that I'm like, oh, wow, I'm going to hate this. Last time was Cat People.
Yeah.
And this time, Baby Jane, I like it. I'm going to give it a yay because I was fully expecting to be bored and not enjoy it, but it kept my attention the whole time. The acting was phenomenal. The story was really good. The twist at the end. And just like the atmosphere, I feel like there was enough suspense that just like really held me in there. And I don't know. I really liked it. So it's a yay from me. What about you, Rowan?
Rowan, before you talk, I do want to just interject and say that I do appreciate Mike choosing things like this, at least. Yeah. Because, like, don't get me wrong, it's inevitable I'll choose probably every single A24 horror movie under the sun. But it's very unlikely I'd wind up watching something like this, once again, outside of, like, an indie theater showing it when I'm in Toronto sometime, right? So it's like, I do appreciate kind of forcing me to watch this, at least, even if, like, once again, in the conditions I watched it yesterday, I didn't, like,
not ideal. Yeah.
No, it's still an inspired pick, and it's also something that, like, when I watch it, I'm like, I'm not gonna relitigate is this a horror movie, but it is like barely horrific, like it was just kind of like, okay, well, whatever, anyways. Rowan, go on.
Yeah, I think I'm landing with Colton on this one. I'm giving it an okay. It's a pretty light okay because I was gonna come in and give it an A. I didn't really enjoy it. It's just not.
We know you were like literally fuming from the start.
Yeah, I mean, it just wasn't for me. I mean, everything was long. I thought everything was drawn out. Like I said, I have no connection with Bette Davis or Joan Crawford, so like that doesn't do anything for me. It also, this was one of those ones I usually argue for every pick that Mike makes that isn't a horror movie or barely a horror movie or anyone makes, and this one I was like, fuck, man, this is rough. This is like, other than if
it literally everything considers it a horror movie.
I know.
He is right. I've looked at it as well. It's just for 100%. Me, it's like in a modern lens. I don't know if this came out nowadays, we'd call it a horror movie. I think we'd just call it like a dark drama or something, But like, yes, everything does call it a horror from back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's a personal taste. Like I said, I know everybody loves this movie. It's, lauded. It's on every important list. It's in museums, all this kind of stuff. And as someone that, I've spent probably the last year or two, I've been like trying to expand my horizons into, the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s. Like, I kept thinking about stuff like, I talked about it last year where it was like my first time ever watching like Marilyn Monroe, who I was like, there's no way I'm going to like any of this. And then I was like, holy shit, like, how have I never watched this in my life? Where this, I was actually kind of excited to sit down and watch it. And then I watched it and I was like, oh, yeah, no, my life would have been fine without seeing this movie. So, yeah, you know what? Just not for me.
The homophobia.
Yeah, real homophobia.
I wonder if you watched like something from like their prime, like Bette Davis's and Joan Crawford's prime, though, would you feel like the magnetism like you did with like a Marilyn Monroe, right? Like, I wonder.
I kept trying to think, and I don't know if I have an answer yet, because I was like, I wonder if this is something I would go back and watch. I feel like you said, Colton, I'd be more inclined if it was like at my like independent theater for a showing or something like that. Like, I don't know if like sitting at home, I'm ever throwing this in for a good time.
Well, that's why I'm saying, like, I felt like I did the movie a disservice, right? I had to watch it because it's so long. I had to make sure that I watched it before today so we could do the episode, and it just happened to be my third movie of the day yesterday, right? So it was just like, it was like I did pay attention for a full hour and 15, but like after that, I have to be honest that like I was scrolling every now and then when I was bored for the last hour of the movie, right? So it's just like I have to just be honest to myself and the listeners that it's just like it lost me after an hour 15, essentially, right? So,
we appreciate your honesty. So a slay, a yay, and 2 okays. Oh my god, I can just hear Letterboxd dragging us right now.
We are getting crucified on Letterboxd when you throw up that average score between the four of us. But
that's you two dragging it down. So
I can't lie, I'm not doing it. So I'm sorry.
We're just truthful
we'll be tarred
people.
and feathered, I guess. I don't know.
So with that, we're gonna head over to the horrific hotline, and before we get into the voicemail, we did have a question come in and 2 comments, I guess. So our first comment was from Holly, a beloved Patreon member, Holly P. And she said the choice of this film, she said, Mike really brought it. Wow, I can't believe I've never seen this before.
Holly,
horrifying. So, yeah, obviously Holly appreciated it.
Yeah, she gave that a 4.5, and she like wrote about how much she loved it on Letterboxd as well.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah, she very much liked it.
Holly, we're just not on the same level, I guess. I'm sorry. I'm on a lower level.
Yeah, Rose on that Tubi level. Don't you worry about
it. That's right. Then friend of the podcast, Willow, wrote in with a question for Mike that said, have Mike list his top 5 ingredients for a camp horror classic.
Oh my god, not my top 5 ingredients. Okay, Bette Davis, Joan Crawford. Okay, character who lives with their mom.
All right.
1, old person. 2.
Just any old person, or like an old, like in the main acting role, or just like in the background there's an old person dawdling down the road, like.
No, an old person who thinks that they're still young. How about that?
All right, there we go.
Well, why are you doing this to me?
Makeup and wig?
Wigs, obviously. Wigs. Always the wigs. The makeup too, but like the wig in this particularly did a lot of work, and I can't even call it a bad wig because it was spectacular. A really bad song.
All right. Like letters.
A really bad song.
Here. Yeah.
And I'm gonna say at least 1 to 3 really good quotable lines of dialogue that a drag queen could say and get away with.
I like it.
Strong.
Yeah, that's it.
It's like the commandments. Mike's top 5 commandments of campy horror.
Listen, now I'm I'm reaching over to my bookcase. I'm like, okay, where's my copy of Notes on Camp? Like my Susan Sontag, like annotated version that I wrote on my,
You're cooking, Mike.
You guys, it's well documented, like my allergy to camp, but I think I would probably agree with those 5 things that he said as well.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's probably present in that.
So with that, we'll kick it on over. I believe Nicholas called in with his thoughts on the film.
All right, so at least in my circle of friends, older movies often have this stigma of being, well, slow or even boring. And I have to admit, I find myself
come to the dark side, Nicholas.
Often, despite being proven wrong time and time again when actually watching the movies. And starting Whatever Happened to Baby Jane with a runtime of over 2 hours, I was a bit afraid again that it might just be a very slow and boring movie. And I'm very happy to report that I was extremely surprised by the movie. I thought it was very fast-paced in many places.
Fast-paced, Nicholas!
Solemnly enjoyed the movie.
No, he has taste. He has taste.
Performances by Joan Crawford and what's her name, Bette Davis. They were incredible in that. The one is this, well, rather completely crazy younger sister who's completely unhinged, and there were a few sequences that were really really tense, made me think of some of those Hitchcock movies where there's a similar tension, and yeah, I was completely blown away. I'm going to slay this movie.
Oh,
yes.
Surprised because I never saw the movie before.
Nicholas
I heard
knows
about it, but never really knew what it was about exactly, and I was just completely captured by it, even though the final twist with the reveal of the accident was not the big surprise I think it wanted to be, but still incredible movie. Also made me think a lot about the Stephen King novel with the number one fan. What did I think? Misery is the name.
Yeah,
Misery. Yeah,
and I'm sure that Stephen King must have watched this movie a few times before he wrote the novel. I can't explain the similarities otherwise. So great pick. Really enjoyed it. Looking forward for the next one.
Yay, Mike.
Amazing.
Oh my god. A sleigh. I'm kind of shocked, but
go back to your hole.
Seems like he really liked the movie.
It's because he has taste. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, when I was listing those psycho-biddy movies as well, like Misery was listed there, so it's definitely of like a similar vein as well. So it's pretty.
Yeah, and like Stephen King, like if you ever read any of his essays and like I mean any articles he writes and the nonfiction books and books about writing and books about horror and stuff, like, he just spent his childhood fucking going to movies and like listening to rock and roll music. So he 100% definitely saw this multiple times.
He's seen it 100%.
Yeah.
And if you want to be like Nicholas and leave us a message on the horrific hotline, you can do so by emailing us at itslaispodcast@gmail.com or messaging us on any of our socials at itslaispodcast. And we'll make sure that we get your questions, your comments, your reviews. It'll make the air. And if you're not following us already on our socials at It Slays Podcast, you can do so on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Slasher, Letterboxd, Threads, Blue Sky. If there's a social media, we're probably there at It Slays Podcast. And if you want to support the show like our horror hounds, Holly, Nicholas, Patrick, Mark, Steven, Joy, Carvey, Dan, Brian, and Trevor, gain access to the Patreon exclusive show Stream Screams hosted by Jill and get episodes of this here main show 48 hours early. Be sure to head on over to patreon.com/itslayspodcast and choose whatever tier works best for you. Rowan, you didn't like the music in this movie. Is I'm writing a letter to Daddy making the playlist?
I didn't like any of the music, but I mean, I'm a man of the people. So if the people want something from this, I would make sure that it got put on. But yeah, if you want to go over to Spotify, to the It Slays Podcast horrific playlist. If you have any problems finding it, you can go to any of the social media that Colton just mentioned. Go into the bio, click the Linktree link. It'll take you directly to it. We upload licensed music or scores from iconic horror movies we review, or just horror movies we love. So yeah, go follow that playlist. We update it pretty regularly, and get your spooky music on, because why the hell not? And with that, all we have left is to announce our next episode, which isn't anyone's pick. It's just the obvious pick, really. I know, guys, when I'm getting to go out on a night on the town, I put on a good outfit, and I put on some nice shoes, and the most important thing is to make sure the buckles on me shoes are shined.
Okay. I was wondering where you were going with this. It's like, this is a long walk.
I feel like it's too soon for this already.
Oh,
I feel like it's not even been a year.
It is time. We are doing Leprechaun 4, but not just Leprechaun 4. Leprechaun 4 in space.
Hell yeah.
We're in Pisces season. Man. It must be Leprechaun.
Yeah, we are getting ready to make sure all our viewers find out what the film that most critics said is better than any Star Wars film ever made. And that is Leprechaun 4. So,
wow.
Get that into your eyeballs. We're going to try our hardest to make sure we can get, special guest appearance of some voice effect work going on in that episode.
The Leprechaun is returning.
Sort of. The Leprechaun herself.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, get that into your eye holes, and we will be back in 2 weeks with that. Thank you for the support, as always. I am your humble host, Rowan.
Thanks, it's Mike.
And I'm Colton. Don't kill me for my review.
Bye, it's Jill.
I didn't forget your breakfast. I didn't bring you breakfast because you didn't eat your did.